Hello, everyone, once again. Another session today, session number 20. This is going to be the last session for the 2024. For the ones who are going to see the videos, this is like again just a part of the session. Some of the questions might be included, some of the questions are not included. We are going to have different topics, and here please always practice like free will or discernment. Take what you want, things that resonate with you. Remember, this is not like just a single point of view. It's just our host, Gabriel, is expressing his ideas, his somehow discernment as well, and is helping us to a little bit understand or teaching us a way to digest again this material. This session is kind of, I really like this session because it talks a lot about pets, second density, and as well how it's the process from second to third density. But I'm not the one who is going to talk about that. The one who is going to again help us with is Gabriel. So hello and welcome, Gabriel.
Gracias, Tatiana. Yes, we are definitely going to session 20 today. We'll probably cover this in two parts because this exceeds the 40 questions or Q&As. So we're going to get as far as we can, possibly all the way up to question 25 or so. And we'll leave the rest for next year, actually. So um, there is beautiful talk about second density as we continue to move from last session where they talked about the evolution basically from the beginning of second density, third density, and so on. So I find a lot of the questions obviously overlap between uh, different densities, and Don's intention, as we'll read, is to get to the beginnings of fourth density. So we're gonna not gonna cover all that in this session. I don't think in this session in general, but definitely not in this group call that we have. But let's begin with the first question. And I don't think I'll skip many, just maybe a couple, since these are all pretty valuable to the one who wants to understand the dynamics of evolution and the nuances about our particular planet and its own evolution. So, first question is done explaining his intention and then his question. So I'll just read it all so we all know where this is going. He says, I was thinking the best way to do the book is to continue working on the history of evolution and its mechanism until we completely make it through the third density and what will occur into the first part of the fourth density, so that the mechanisms of developing the mind body spirit complex will be brought out. If I get stymied someplace or have some obstruction, obstacles, or hindrance in his line of question, is what he's saying. In one of these sessions, as to what questions to ask and where to not waste time, I may ask some questions that I will use later in the book, but we'll try to always continue along these lines. Little parenthesis here. I think Don's intention, and they did actually do this with the original material. You'll see questions that belong to one session. It doesn't happen too often, but you can get confused if you read the original and then the raw contact. Some of the questions were shuffled, and for it was his consideration to have a little bit more of a flow. But we studied material to a level of just reading everything that was channeled in the moment. So um, we're not going to encounter that discrepancy in the sessions. It was a little confusing for me at the beginning because I read the original and then the raw contact. But in any case, he goes to his question and says, first question, to go back just a little bit, is what happened to the second density entities who were on this planet who were unharvestable? I assume there were some that didn't make the harvest into the third density. Can you tell me this? So, a little bit of context, we have been talking about the evolution between second density to third density, that transition, that graduation. And Don is asking, what happened to the entities in second density that didn't graduate? And we'll find out that this is, in essence, the short answer to this is that second densities are still in the planet. So at that moment, they were able to graduate, to continue to graduate into third density. So Ra says the second density is able to repeat during third density a portion of its cycle. So that's basically saying all second density at that time were able to incarnate in third density if they graduated, of course. So it's a continuous process of evolution. Something that at our point, I need to make the distinction that is my speculation that second density entities are not reincarnating as third density because it's already fourth density, but that's a little bit too complicated if you guys want to talk about this. It's not so complicated, but it just requires a little bit more of context as to why there is no more um, allowance for, and again, it's my speculation, for second density to graduate at this point in time. But back then, 75,000 years ago, and throughout the cycle, that was the case. Again, if you guys want clarification on this, we can talk about it at the end, or even now. Up to you. Question 2, Don says, then the second density entities that did not get harvested at the beginning of this 75,000 year period, some are still in second density on this planet. Were any of these who remain in second density harvested into third density in the past 75,000 years? This has been increasingly true, says Ra. Again, that's the model that we have, in my understanding. Through the cycle of third density, these 75,000 years, second density continues to evolve. And when these second density entities become, or let's say, increase their capacity for self-awareness, then reaches a point where that individualized portion of consciousness is able to graduate or move into a vehicle that obviously offers that capacity, that being the human being that has the capacity for self-reflection, which animals, trees don't have inherently. I'm talking about the vehicle itself. Awareness always has self-awareness. Question 3, Don says, so more and more second density entities are making it into third density. Can you give me an example of a second density entity coming into third density, say in the recent past? And here we go to pets. Ross says, perhaps the most common occurrence of second density graduation during third density cycle is the so-called pet, the animal which is exposed to the individualizing influences of the bond between animal and third density entity. This individuation causes a sharp rise in the potential of the second density entity so that upon the cessation of the physical complex or death, the mind-body complex, notice that they don't say mind-body-spirit, although it's a little bit contentious because sometimes they do refer to mind-body-spirit complexes when they refer to animals. They say this to one of their cats, actually. But the mind-body complex does not return onto the undifferentiated consciousness of that species, if you will. Maybe that's why they said mind-body, because if they haven't developed the spirit complex yet, which is just another way of saying becoming self-aware to the sufficient point in which they can reincarnate in a third density vehicle, aka human body, then maybe it's still a mind-body complex. Question 4, Don says, then can you give me an example of an entity in third density that was just previously a second density entity? What type of entity do they become here? Ross says, as a second density entity returns as third density for the beginning of this process of learning, the entity is equipped with the lowest, so-called, so-called these vibrational distortions, forms of third density consciousness. That is, equipped with self-consciousness. So in essence, human body and the capacity, of course, as I have been saying, of self-awareness, which is the brain, the developed human brain. It's able to self-reflect our blessing and our curse, poetically speaking. And Don clarifies this, says, this would be a human in our form. Then who would be beginning the understandings of their density. Is this correct? Ra says this is correct. So here's where I play a little bit of devil's advocate with the last question, which Tad had last week. Do all third density entities incarnate in human form? Well, maybe. As they say here, this would be a human in our form. Food for thought. Question 6. Don says, speaking of the rapid change that occurred in the physical vehicle, the change from second to third density, this, you said, occurred in approximately a generation and a half. Body hair was lost and there were structural changes. We talked about this, I think it was last session. Here gets interesting, and I want to offer my perspective on this. But Don says, I am aware of the physics of Dewey B. Larson, who states that all is motion or vibration. Am I correct in assuming that the basic vibration, which makes up the physical world as we experience it, changes, thus creating a different set of parameters, shall I say, in the short period of time between density changes, allowing for the new type of vehicle? Am I correct? Ross says this is correct. So I'll just explain my thought process here. Take what you will. But usually when we talk about physics, particularly from the point of view, from Don's point of view, we imagine matter vibrating, right? Matter is vibrating, and so that's what creates the changes and so on. I would say something different, which is that is awareness that vibrates. There is no such thing as matter. We haven't found matter yet. Okay. So we can actually simplify it. We can simplify this so much more rather than thinking of quantum physics and all that jazz. Awareness or the field of awareness just simply changes, right? There is a desire for a new experience. And so everything that is already vibrating as awareness becomes a little bit more complex, right? It's a dance rather than some, bouncing balls or strings moving along. It's a dance. It's a playfulness. It's a dream. Um, if you want a reference for this, everything is the sun right here. I mean, even from the physical perspective of the sun being a disk, right? Initially is a disk, and then every single planet is just a fragment of the sun. So it's the same sun. The planet is the sun. And so when you look at things moving here, are there particular things moving? No, it's the sun still. You look at the most abundant thing moving, and it's vegetable or grass, this green stuff. It's all over the place. We're infested with green stuff in this planet. It's all moving. And thanks to that green stuff, we have other little things that feed from that, right? A little bit more complex. And so they feed from that and they move in different ways. I'm talking about movement as, life. So it just gets more and more complex in terms of awareness and what it does. And it keeps doing this and it moves further and further along the complexity of, this beautiful dance. So that's the tendency. This movement is awareness moving in a direction towards infinity. And that is spiritual evolution as we reach this state of third density. So it's a dance and the music changes and that which is moving at the rhythm then starts to dance that way. That's the way I see it. And that is motion, vibration, different set of parameters and so on. We don't have to be, in fact, I wouldn't suggest that we go that route to understand what these changes in vibration are. Very simple, just awareness. And what is the highest awareness? Unity. There you go. That's the highest tune. I could go on for a while on this, but let's move on. And um, actually, there's more about Dewey Larson, so I'll keep um, my mojo here. Question 7, Don says, just as a sideline, a side question here, is the physics of Dewey Larson correct? Ross says, the physics of sound vibrational complex Dewey is a correct system as far as it is able to go. There are those things which are not included in this system. However, those coming after this particular entity using the basic concepts of vibration and the study of vibrational distortions will begin to understand that which you know as gravity and those things you consider as n dimensions. These things are necessary to be included in a more universal, shall we say, physical theory. So we're just beginning to grasp the idea that everything is interconnected and that everything is just one. Whatever that one is just this one thing. There is no separation. Everything is interconnected. So these are the things that need to be included, of course, for a universal understanding of physical theory. So these are just the beginning. And yeah, again, that's why I say there is no need, obviously, to go into mathematics and physics to understand this. It's just another route. Yeah, we can develop. In fact, science, as we know it, materialistic science, even to a certain degree, materialistic science, probably like a religion, quantum physics, a little bit more mystical, if you will, but it's just another model. It's like studying, any mystical tradition. Same thing. It all reaches the same thing. So why bother yourself with studying all of that when you have access to it right now? What are you, what are you postponing it for? Access it now. It's right here. You don't need anything. Mind doesn't need anything to reach that. It is made out of that. So just become aware of it. And everything is just simply understood. We just like to distort it in words and concepts and ideas and models and philosophies and so on. Question 8, Don says, was this entity, Dewey, did he bring this material through in his incarnation for use primarily in four density? Ross says this is correct. And this obviously makes sense, right? Four density is the vibration of love and understanding. There is no veil, and everything is seen as it is, one interconnected being. We were beginning to see that. We're beginning to enjoy that. There's like an explosion of an ecstasy of seeing, oh, wow, we're all the same thing. And so, of course, this is part of it, you know. It's almost like any physics that we have in third density. If we ask it to a second density, oh, do we have this because of third density? Yes, we started making these little sticks, we started sharpening these sticks or stones so we can be more like third density, something like that. If you can follow me on that analogy, it's always useful for me to use a lower density that we can um, overwhelmingly understand if we can dramatize it. I feel like I'm reading the raw content. Question 9, Don says, thank you. Yesterday, we were speaking of the split that takes place in third density when an entity, either consciously or because of bias, chooses the path of service to others or service to self. The philosophical question of why such a split even exists came up. It is my impression that as it is in electricity, if we have no polarity in electricity, we have no electricity. We have no action. We have no, he stops and says, therefore, I am assuming that in consciousness, without such polarity, there would be no action or experience. Is this correct? Ron says, you may use, I correct myself. They say, this is correct. You may use the general term work. So, working consciousness, as we'll see. But this necessity for polarity is obviously to move in that direction, which is the choice and is what, speaking of evolution, it moves into the same direction, both polarities, of course. Don says, then the concept of service to self or service to others is mandatory if we wish to have work, whether it be work in consciousness or work in the mechanical or Newtonian concept in the physical. Is this correct? Ra says this is correct with one addendum or one addition. The coil, as you may understand this term, is wound, is potential, is ready. The thing that is missing without polarizing is the charge. So you are the coil. Where is your charge? And how do you increase that charge? That's basically the work that is done by clearing out, by getting yourself out of the way. Get that image out of the way, and it just polarizes naturally, effortlessly. It only seems work or effort if it's the ego doing it. Write that down. It's true. It's true. You can check it in your experience. If it only seems like an effort if it's the separate self doing it. Don continues and says, then the charge is provided by individualized consciousness. Is this correct? Ra agrees, but actually gives some clarification. They say the charge is provided by the individualized entity using the inpourings and instreamings of energy by the choices of free will. So again, using the inpourings and instreamings, is that something that you do? You don't. You just allow it, right? So allowing this inpourings and instreamings of energy by the choices of free will. What is your choice? Well, basic choice is polarity. Second is to what to allow and what not. Those are our supposed blockages, which I would just call them decisions, ways to distort the energy that is coming through. So when you open yourself in service, for example, you're not choosing that service. Your service should be as, again, effortless as possible. It should be, because that's what you do as infinite. It comes through you that you can do this all day, right? So the question is, why are you not doing it all day, every day? That's the question. How do you choose to distort that which is coming through you? And here's, the whole dilemma of what am I here to do? What's my purpose? How do I want to serve? And so on. Well, ask yourself, why are you not doing it? You may not even be aware. So start there. As you become more aware, that just starts to come through more. I can definitely talk about this for an hour, but that's not what we're talking about here. Just because we mentioned there are so many things implied in this conversation, which is service to others, right? We're talking about that. And I know we're studying it in a mechanical way to understand the dynamics and all of this, but what does this mean for us? What's the meaning of this for us? Do we satisfy the mind? I know a model that explains reality. Great. All right, how do I use this? How do I see this in my experience? How does this change myself? How does this make me transform this into something that is greater than me and that it serves the right people that I'm supposed to serve? So much to talk about here. But we have to move to another topic. This is question 12. Don says, thank you. As soon as the third density started 75,000 years ago, and we have incarnate third density entities, what was the average human lifespan at that time? This answers a little bit of what I mentioned last week about how long did it take for second density to move into third density, which was a generation and a half. And I said it was about 1,300 years. Ra says, what's the lifespan, or what was the lifespan 75,000 years ago? They say at the beginning of this particular portion of your space-time continuum, so 75,000 years ago, the average lifetime was approximately 900 of your years average. So some less, some more. So it took about that time for the full transition to happen. Second to third, human body. Question 13, Don says, did the average lifespan grow longer or shorter as we progress on into third density experience? So from the beginning, 75,000 years ago, moving forward, was it shorter, longer? Ross says there is a particular use for this span of life in this density. And given the harmonious development of the learning teachings of this density, the lifespan of the physical complex would remain the same throughout the cycle. However, your particular planetary sphere developed vibrations by the second major cycle, which shortened the lifespan dramatically. So, in short, there is an average lifespan that stays or should stay the same, but because of some things that we're going to understand a little bit more as the questions flow, there was a decrease. And Don is going to ask about that. What was this decrease? And happening by the second major cycle, which means 25,000 years later, so 50,000 years ago. Don says, assuming a major cycle is 25,000 years, at the end of this first 25,000 year cycle, how long was the lifespan? So at the end of this first 25,000, right at the first ending of the major cycle. Ross says the lifespan at the end of the first cycle, which you call major, was approximately 700 of your years. Not too shabby, pretty good, but still, they decreased 200, which is about 20%. Don asks, then in 25,000 years, we lost 200 years of lifespan. Is this correct? Ross says this is correct. Question 16, Don says, can you tell me the reason for this shortening of lifespan? So what caused it? Ross says the causes of this shortening are always an euphonious. I promise I practiced this word and I forgot. Euphonious. There it is. Euphonious or inharmonious means the same thing. Relational vibration between other selves. So basically just disharmony between interactions or relationships with others. In the first cycle, this was not severe due to the dispersion of peoples, but there was the growing feeling complex distortion towards separateness from other selves. There's a little correction here made by, I assume it was Jim. The original sentence actually reads, in the first cycle, this was not severe, but due to the dispersion of peoples and the growing feeling complex distortion towards separateness from other selves, which kind of makes sense that he added or they added, but there was the growing feeling. In essence, what this is conveying is that because there was a growing feeling of separation between self and other, there was this shortening of the lifespan. We're going to find out why that causes a shortening of lifespan, and I'll probably give my speculation on it. But that was the reason. It's just inharmonious relationship with each other. Question 17, Don says, I'm assuming at the start of one of these cycles, there could have been either a positive polarization that would generally occur over the 25,000 years or a negative polarization. Is the reason for the negative polarization and the shortening of the cycle the influx of entities from Mars who had already polarized somewhat negatively? Ross says this is incorrect. If that wasn't clear, Don is saying that was it the reason that the Martian population came here and their negative polarization affected also Earth, humans? Ross says this is incorrect, so it wasn't caused by the Martian population. There was not a strong negative polarization due to this influx. The lessening of the lifespan was due primarily to the lack of the building up of positive orientation. When there is no progress, those conditions which grant progress are gradually lost. This is one of the difficulties of remaining unpolarized. the chances, shall we say, of progress become steadily less. My speculation here, and just to play with little tools that I have in my head, is that likewise, if there is no desire for growth, if there is no desire to do anything, the body begins to just kind of decay, right? It's not the main reason why the body decays, but we can see that, the body's kind of looking for self-destruction. We see that. Whereas, when there is a lot of joy and vital energy, then the body seems healthy, right? If we see that over a period of time, I would think that, and this is just me playing with my own my own little toys in my head. Maybe DNA, gets reprogrammed that way. Maybe, the structure of the biology of our bodies just change and stays that way. I don't know. I really don't know. Just me playing with these things, but it makes sense to me. And that's because, yes, we're not using the body in the way it was designed, right? User lucid kind of thing. Yeah. Question 18, right? That's where we are. Yes. Question 18. Don says, the way I understand it, at the beginning of this 75,000 year cycle, then we have a mixture of entities. Those who have graduated from second density on Earth to become third density, and then a group of entities transferred from the planet Mars to incarnate into third density here. Is this correct? Ra says this is correct. Question 19, Don interrupts. So he says continue. Ra continues and says, you must remember that those transferred to this sphere were in the middle of their third density, so that this third density was an adaptation rather than a beginning. So I don't think there's much to say here. It's just mixture of those who came from Mars, those who are graduating on Earth, and we're gonna find out more about that. Another source. We haven't mentioned Maldek here, and they won't mention it, so I'll just say it. But I'll say it in a little bit. Let's go to question 20. We're discussing, in essence, origin of population or the origin of souls on planet Earth. So, question 20, Don says, thank you. What percentage of the entities roughly who were in third density here at that time were Martian, and what percentage were harvested out of Earth's second density? So, what percentage was Mars? What percentage was Earth's natural evolved humans? Ross says, there were perhaps one half of the third density population beings, entities from the red planet, Mars, as you call it. So half of, I don't know what the population was at that point, but half of it was from Mars. Perhaps one quarter from second density of your planetary sphere, so only 25% of humans here were from original planet Earth, second density. Approximately one quarter from other sources, other planetary spheres whose entities chose this planetary sphere for their density work. I forget if we talked about Deneb. I just have that in my memory bank as Deneb being one of the planets, or rather, I guess Deneb is a star, but a planet in Deneb. I think Ra mentioned that second density were graduating into third density, but the planet itself wasn't third density vibration. So there was a decision. I don't know if this was conscious or through the Confederation. I'm not sure about this, but they moved here. So I think part of that population is from there. Maybe they came later on in the the Great Cycle, the 75,000 year. I don't remember, but yes. So we have 50% of the original 75,000 year Earth population being from Mars, and 25% from here, 25% from other planets, second density who move into third density. Don says, when they incarnated here, did they mix? Did all three of these types mix together in societies or groups? Or were they separated by group or society? Ra says they remained largely unmixed. So they didn't meet, they didn't mix with each other, or at least not too much in a general sense. Maybe the occasional teenager that said, I'm leaving, I'm going to explore the world, and they found maybe some other village or civilization, if we could call them that. Question 22, Don says, then did this unmixing lend to a possibility of separation of group then, or the possibility of warlike attitude between groups? Of course, we're humans. We do this. That's what we bring to the universe. So Ra says this is correct. And Don says that this then helped to reduce the lifespan. Ra says this did reduce the lifespan, as you call it. And last couple of questions. Let's see. Yeah, let's go with these last two questions. Don says, can you tell me why 900 years is the optimum lifespan? So why did we need 900 years at the beginning? Ra says, the mind-body-spirit complex of third density has perhaps 100 times as intensive a program of catalytic action from which to distill distortions and learn teachings than any other of the densities. Keep that in mind for when we talk about later on higher densities and the pallid or diluted experience that is felt there. This is 100 times, perhaps 100 times as intensive a program of catalytic action. That's a lot. So, Ross says, the learned teachings are most confusing to the mind-body-spirit complex, which is, shall we say, inundated by the ocean of experience. There's a very strong curriculum to study, to go through. Ross says, during the first, shall we say, perhaps 150 to 200 of your years as you measure time, a mind-body-spirit complex is going through the process of a spiritual childhood. The mind and the body not enough in a disciplined configuration to lend clarity to the spiritual influxes. Thus, the remaining time span is given to optimize the understandings which result from experience itself. Now, you may be thinking, if it takes 150 to 200 years, right? And that's still sort of spiritual childhood, then what are we? Babies? Is that what we are? Well, the answer is no, not really. And I'll talk about this. I actually have a reference that I want to read just to clarify this. Because, just superficially, that's the conclusion that we can come up with, right? We can say, oh, no, it's 200 years. Nobody even reaches 100 years. Few people do. But the next question and the other one that I'm going to share will clarify this. Don says, question 25, the last question from this session today. Then at present, it would seem that our lifespan is much too short for those who are new to third density lessons. Is this correct? The key here is to those new to third density. Ra says this is correct. Those entities which have, in some way, taught themselves the appropriate distortions for rapid growth can now work within the confines of the shorter lifespan. However, the greater preponderance or inclination or how do I define preponderance? I can somebody look it up if it's still. I don't have a synonym. I should have synonyms for this. The greater preponderance of your entities find themselves in what may be considered a perpetual childhood. So again, this is just something that we can speculate based on what we know. And I have something else that I'll share. Obviously, if a second density entity moves into third density, right? Second density, move to third density, new experience. It needs to experience everything from the beginning. On a short lifespan, it seems like you need probably 100 incarnations, right, to reach or at least have some possibility of developing enough polarization in third density to move into fourth. And that is right. That's what Ross says. It is correct. Those who are new to third density will have that. But there should be a but or a however there. Ross says those entities, right? I'm going to add the however. However, those entities which have in some way learned, taught themselves the appropriate distortions for rapid growth can now work within the confines of the short lifespan. So over time, there's also, I guess, this effect of the programming into incarnation being of the most efficient way. It's almost like, yes, there is a shorter lifespan, but we have learned how to adapt to that. Or human soul has learned how to adapt to that, to strategically place um, the lessons, right? The catalysts necessary for growth. And there's also one important part that I think is tied into this. This is a question that we covered already in session 4. And they're talking about healing. And the first part doesn't really matter that much, is when Ra says, we ask your imagination to consider the relative simplicity of the mind in the earlier cycle and the less distorted, but often overly complex views and thought spirit processes of the same mind body spirit complexes after many incarnations, right? So the relative simplicity of the mind at the beginning of the cycle, very simple. It required a lot of time to process all these experiences. Plus, not much catalyst was added. So there's a lot of simplicity at the beginning of the cycle. There's a higher complexity at the end, but that's because the mind has become even more complex, right? That's what they're saying. And here's another thing. Like this has so many dimensions, but um, I think they're referring here to obviously experienced souls, we may say, veterans of third density. They say, this is question 9, by the way, in session 4. We also ask your imagination to conceive of those who have chosen the distortion of service and have removed their mind body spirit complexes from one dimension to another, thus bringing with them, in sometimes totally latent form, many skills and understandings which more closely match the distortions of the healing patient processes. If you think that healing has nothing to do with higher understanding, then think again, because this is precisely what we were talking about. Healing, aligning, it's basically allowing this understanding of unity to inform the mind. So here's the other part that comes into play with lifespan. Do we really need 900 years today? No, we don't. This is perfectly fine. I do think that obviously, which is not happening anymore at least in my mind, second density is moving to third. So any animals, let's talk about animals who graduated to third density, they had a lot to learn. So did they move into third density. Some of them did, maybe. I mean, into fourth density eventually. Well, I think I'm getting too lost in imagination, but yeah, this just wanted to say that if we get into the bowels of this, it gets probably too complicated. But um, that's the premise, that's the structure, the inevitable vector of movement. And in terms of third density, as we are right now, lifespan is perfectly fine. So that is all I got for today. We're going to continue with a different topic, other topics next year.
Yes, indeed. So I mentioned too much topics for today, but we are going to cover those next year when we have the opportunity. Today we are in today, and that's enough. So thank you so much, Gabriel, again for just covering this part of the questions, and again repeating several times that this just like what you is your acceptance, your grade of discernment is your opinion. This is not that everyone else needs to believe or create or follow. It's just a way to teach what can be or what we can interpret about this session. So participants, if you want to raise questions, you know already, you have the opportunity to do it so. For I will say that I just write two questions actually for my discernment or what I wanted to clarify. Maybe you have, Gabriel, something about to say that. I'm going to read the first one, which was concerned to the second question of the session. And actually it goes like, let me see. Depending of the density, and this is actually something that we were discussing I believe in one of our meditation group with Josh, which occurs Fridays and Sundays for the ones who want to participate. We have also meditation. So yeah, we were talking about that, and for me, it was not really clear when you exactly are able to have this harvest or this graduation from your density. So it means that depending of the density you are right now, for example, I will say like I'm third density or I'm fourth density. I don't know exactly which density I am, but I'm in third density. Let's say that so. You can be harvest in the density you are in that period. Or it means, for example, that if I'm in third density, I have to at least complete 75,000 years to pass to the next density, which is fourth density. Or if, for example, I'm fourth density, but I'm in the third density, I do have exactly the same time, or I need to complete the time of my fourth density span.
That's a good question that I don't have an answer to because there are things that allude to the possibility of being harvested whenever you want to fourth density. And then there is the question as to why we have cycles, right? Why do we even have 25,000 year cycles? Like, what's that about? Um, is it just a structure? I mean, the 75,000 year cycle seems to be like uh, a bandwidth, if you will, of time through which there is a vibration of their density for that experience. But why do we need, I mean, that would make sense, graduation at the end of 75,000 years is just saying, all right, who's moving and where you're moving. Actually, everybody's moving. Whatever you're going, you're going someplace. But the 25,000 years is the one that I guess confuses us. And I don't have an answer for that, to be honest. To me, it makes sense that obviously, when a mind, first, I like to refer to people, person, mind, body, spirit complex, whatever you want to call it, as individualized portions of consciousness, an experience, a stream of experience, right? That's all we are. We're not individual agent of reality. There's just one experience. When that experience has reached a point in which it can have higher experiences, then it's able to move through densities as it will. Why not? Um, so yeah, I don't see the necessity. The only thing that makes total sense to me is that there is a limited time because things are moving, right? Things are moving and they change. And so when the music changes, then everybody dances to that music. And when the music changes again, if you don't know how to dance the next one, then you got to find a place where you continue to dance what you're dancing. But the one that confuses me is, and at any point, if you're dancing at, third density and you know how to dance five or fifth, sixth density, or stop dancing if you want to, we're looking for stillness. Whatever it is that you want to do and can do, then you should be doing, or that experience, right? Because all we are is experience. It's nothing else to us. There's nothing we can truly say about us but experience. So if you're an experienced dancer, then what stops you, from moving along? Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody smarter than me knows the answer about the 25,000 year cycles, but I don't know why we have those.
Periods of time. It's just like I have glimpses of one of your podcast sessions that you were mentioned, guys, like we are in third density, are here to somehow like dance together. We are dancing together here. We are understanding to have a tribe, and we are becoming a tribe. And that's the music here, to understand what is a tribe. And you were saying, and in other densities, you are going to again to be alone. But here, you really need to understand, like you have an experience, and you have to dance together in the same song. And I was just again hearing your voice in my head when you were saying this in the podcast. So thank you. Really, your I really like your podcast session because I can create these kind of movies. And again, just have the glimpse right now here. So that actually comes to my second question, which is like, I have to read. That was like the last question above, where like, I'm just going to reread it because the question says, I am assuming that at the start of one of those cycles, there could have been either a positive polarization that will generally occur over 25,000 years or a negative polarization. Sorry, no, it was not that one, it's this one. Can you tell me why 900 years is the optimum of lifespan? And then Ra said that is has perhaps one, that we hear right now, we have this 100 times as intense program of catalytic. So my question goes like, though does that mean of those going through this density, no, yes, of this density, uh, we are the bravest to experience everything here? Or does this occur in all places of experience within the third density and all its octaves? Like, it's just on planet Earth that it is happening, this nine, like the percentage of catalyst is so stronger? And is this because we are humble enough, or we have the absentas or courage to be here with this so, might say, hard catalyst? Or it just happened here on Earth, or it happens everywhere around the world, everywhere around the universe or existence of infinite intelligence, like everywhere.
Yeah, so I have two answers there that we can play with our imagination. First, we have something absolutely um, certain if we follow the material and obviously believe that this is true, which kind of makes sense. I mean, just not need to believe what is true or not, just that it makes sense in uh, in the grand scheme of things. So the first thing is to acknowledge that third density is structured currently with what we call a veil of forgetting, which is the boldest, most uh, amazing thing that has been designed for awareness to experience itself. And this veil of forgetting creates a very intense, very vivid experience of separation. That's what brings so much catalyst. That's what brings, because remember, what is catalyst doing if not accelerating a process? That's what catalyst means. So what is this process that is being catalyzed, that is being accelerated? Growth, evolution, uh, movement, upwards movement. So why does the veil produce so much catalyst? Well, because in order for us to grow or move in the direction of unity, we must be separated. Without a veil, their density is quite separated, sure, but not much catalyst. Introduce the veil, and then there is a lot of catalyst because the feeling of separation, the experience of I am a separate being and I must defend myself, and so on. Everything that the veil introduces becomes very real. Yes. So that's what makes third density in general so intense. It makes it very, very, just desirable. Like, uh, we want this. Imagine watching a movie where nothing happens, just a bunch of, you know, landscapes and people walking. There's nothing going on. Who cares? We want drama. We want tension. We want things to happen. I want to be, grasping at, the armchair at the edge of my seat. What I enjoy. And awareness is doing the same thing. This is the Hindu lila, play, divine play. So my assumption is if um, we find coherence in what Ra says, that the whole universe must be veiled in third density. My understanding is that there may be some that are not. There is an added complexity to this, which is the archetypes, and I won't talk about that. But the veil introduces the archetypical mind, which is, a whole different way of complicating things, but it does create different experiences. So some may be more intense, some may be less intense. Planet Earth, I have no reference to compare it to. Um, if we believe
No?
what people say, I don't remember any other third density planet, but I don't know. It may be very intense. There may be others that are even more, you know. I don't have a reference, but we can imagine that there are, places. I mean, I think we do have a reference if we can go into that, which is Sirius, one of the planets there, it's all trees and seems very boring to me. Just a bunch of trees, everybody's meditating, there's no drama, there's nothing going on, you know. Um, so maybe, for some people are just tired of planet Earth and they say, "Oh, that's heaven." I don't know. There's no heaven to me. There's just experience. You make heaven and hell yourself. So, um, yes, that may be the reason Earth, I don't know where it lies in the spectrum. I guess a little bit more on the side of, intensity. But again, remember, intensity is what we want, what we're attracted to. It's what we love.
That's so funny. Someone today told me like, yeah, it's like a lot of people say you if you want to learn to swim, you have to jump into the water. And yes, some of us, like literally someone told me that sentence today. And again, it's coming somehow. So some of us chose to dive in with full commitment, while others just might prefer just to use a float in different experiences or reincarnations. And it all depends how much you want to remember in a planetary, say like that, experience. And I think so. Our experience, though, is the most adventurous because of the mix of the races, like we have apparently here a lot of races mixed together. So I will say like yes, let's swim, little ducks. Someone else have another question? Um, maybe, maybe yes, maybe not. Because if it's like maybe not, I will ask you, Gabriel, please give us
I have a
close.
question.
You have a question? Oh, sorry, sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Hi, it's Josh. Thank you, Gabriel, and everyone. I'm not sure this may have fall under the earlier question, and if so, don't worry, just say the same. But in one of our groups where one this question came up with Earth is Earth's third density harvest is fast approaching, and us third density humans are ready for at the end of this cycle. But we live among second density creatures, our pets and animals, plants. And through the investment of your pets and the transfer of love, they can get inspirited and become harvestable third density. Like Rod talks about, Gandalf was their cat. But at the harvest, since second density cycle is like millions of years, I'm pretty sure, whereas third density is the 75,000 master cycle, and 25,000 major. When third density harvest happens on Earth, what happens to the second density entities that are harvestable? Like, it's not their harvest yet. They have to wait like millions of years or whatever, or do they coincide, or are they separate?
Really good question, Josh. Thank you. Again, I can only offer my perspective, and I'm trying to remember from the whole material if there is a place where, yeah, it's difficult to sift through the information in my mind if it comes from the raw material somewhere else. But I guess more of a common sense for me is to see that, well, second density will continue to be on the planet. It's just that there won't be a vibration to make a vehicle for third density. I'm pretty sure that there is a part in the raw material where they do say that after a certain period of time, third density will come again. Yes, I'm absolutely sure there is. So there is a period through this transition into fourth density that there won't be any third density vehicle available. So I'm assuming animals will continue um, to evolve because that's just the nature of things. They can't just stop in time. Experience doesn't stop. I mean, that makes total sense. Experience as animals continues. I don't know how much it'll impact fourth density onto them. My assumption is that those of the Confederation that do influence second density animals, plants, etc., uh, will continue to do so. And the graduation, as it happens, would be to another planet, just like those from Deneb and other planetary spheres, as Ross said here, that move here. Maybe that was the condition. There wasn't a third density yet, or it was in the transition to fourth density. So the way I understand it is that planet Earth will have more third density in the future, and that I'm pretty sure that it is on the raw material. Um, Animals will continue to evolve here, but not through the means of investment of third density, obviously, because we won't be here. So just like it was before, through the Confederation influence and through their own experience, which is the natural progression, maybe through fourth density influence also as we are here. I don't know how that works. So yes, that is my view on how this works. Does that answer
So
the question, Josh? Does that
I
help?
I think so. So are you saying what I'm thinking from what you said is that our pets who are harvestable will go to a different planet?
They should. Yeah, at this point, that's my speculation. I don't think because of seniority of vibration and all that stuff. Yeah, pets right now, they should be moving into another planet.
Right. But we don't know, we really don't know when that occurs because the second density cycle, that would happen at the second density cycle ending.
I uh, are you thinking of second density? And I think there's the end of second density. First of all, I don't obviously we didn't have an end to second density. They continue to live among us. What happened was that third density was overlapping, or uh,
Right.
you
Well,
know,
end of cycle, not end like permanent or anything.
yeah, yeah. I think that's what it was. It was the end of only second density entities being here, and now mixed with third density. In the future, we'll have, all four densities together. How that works, I don't know. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that my view is that second density continues like 70,000, 75,000 years ago, they continue, right? And they just continue to graduate. It only, happened that, um, or happened to be that we were in third density cycle. So they were incarnating here as humans. But as we transition into fourth density, there is no more incarnation from second to third. Again, my speculation. And all of our pets will probably go to another planet. And there's just incarnation of fourth density entities here. But they'll continue. I think second density continues to graduate to third density, just not back here for now.
Thank you very much.
And oops, really, my bad, Josh. Thank you for your question. It was necessary to clarify that. So yeah, if someone else have another question, I don't want to interrupt, so I'm going to keep my mouth a little bit closed and wait a little bit.
You're adorable, Ted.
My God. Yes. So, Gabriel, care to sprinkle some final words of wisdom or of you to close us for today, and then we will float off and meet again after the Earth just finished this little twirl around the sun.
Yeah, I guess I'm just always fascinated with because we're studying the raw material and we get all these beautiful concepts about experience, right? All we really know about reality is that there is an experience. That's it. One continuous experience. And because we explored how there is a spirit in the structure of mind and body, there is a spirit. And that spirit is simply the capacity, the quality of being self-aware. What does that mean? I am aware of self, aware of me. And this is what creates the basis for having an experience that individualizes consciousness and creates this abstract thought of me as an entity. And that's what displays the whole idea of us living together, people, entities, and so on, because we see ourselves as separate. And that's fine. That's how we subscribe to the game of experiencing ourselves. Everything that we experience is really ourselves. We begin to see how, these teachings that say, no, 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 People are not doing anything to you. You're doing it to yourself. At the beginning, that's very confusing. We're like, what do you mean? People are obviously doing things to me. You know? But this same self-awareness, if you bring it inside, right? Just bring attention inside, which is a clumsy way of saying stop concentrating. Stop focusing your attention on something, even to the most subtlest thing, which is a thought, a mantra, whatever it is, and just rest in that awareness of self. Because what does I mean in reality? No concepts. Don't let the mind inform you. Ask yourself, what do I mean when I say I? Don't let the mind inform you. It's going to have 100 answers. Don't. Just let them fly. Just stay with the experience of I. That is a direct shuttle to what we call here intelligent infinity, the creator, God, whatever you want to call it. Stay with that. Again, your mind's going to tell you, wow, we're there. Look, this is it. Let it be part of the stream of thoughts. That is self-awareness. What gives us the ability to create this whole illusion of separation, which is, again, I think we put too much emphasis on the negative side of separation. Separation is needed. It's beautiful. It's great to explore myself as, you know, self and other. But that same I is a portal that cuts both ways. I gives birth to the separate being. I returns you to infinity, to the one being. That is the key to everything. There's nothing else that we need to explore but that. And that's always present. You're always I. Just stay with that. I'm going to repeat this 100 times over in our session. So get ready for redundant and repetition here on this. Those are my closing words.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you of our participants in the other side of Earth in America. And thank you for the ones who are here in Europe. And for the multiple language we have here, this is really, I really like this idea to just meet without judgment and just holding this space of commitment, like this date night we have on Thursdays. Thank you again, and we will see you on YouTube if you want to, or we will see you in Zoom if you want to join. And if you want to follow like Gabriel's YouTube, he has his Gaia Despierta channel. If you want to join us on some, you can always join us on some. Just check the descriptions and we will be there. So see you and bye-bye.